that was not
boring at all. Thank you very much, Alex. And for sharing with us
work
and also the interpretation on the new law that the department is having. And also for the invitation, everybody, in the coming weeks, we will have a couple of new heritage renovation things that we can see.
I would like
now to present the third speaker, architect Professor Carlotta Bruni. She is the founder of LBA and has a partner is the recipient of the medal for excellence in 2006 and UNESCO Award for Innovation 2012. She's also my partner and also has been our invited curator for the exhibition on Manuel Vicente that has undertaken 2015 and 16. And her presentation today is on strategies for Macau's border building heritage preservation.
To everybody, I would like to thank the Docomomo for inviting me to this presentation and IFT for hosting the event. I am a practitioner, I am not a scholar, so I have decided just to show some of my, let's say, my train of thoughts about heritage and Macau. I've been practicing in Macau for 20 years, so I have a general idea of how heritage has been protected in the city and how us as practitioners can help or create disasters as we go through. So I think, I believe that the context is what makes the architect develop strategies and creativity towards the built environment. And in Macau, the Macau city fabric, as we know, is very dense. Macau has a strong real estate industry, and it is managed by a profit-driven urbanism. And due to the limited land resources, often this industry expands by tearing down and rebuilding existing plots. So we have here an example of Macau in the 80s, and we have an example of Macau nowadays. The city has completely grown within its boundaries. It has expanded through reclamation, and the old fabric has been dramatically transformed. I call this process cannibalization. It is a consequence of the very little regulation that there is in place in the territory, and it creates disorganization of the city brain, of the light and shadow balance, of the common space as roads and sidewalks. When we transfer the concept of cannibalization into the city brain, sometimes we can see that the continuity of the brain is disrupted, and we can have these kinds of examples where it looks almost useless to keep the only original building within the city continuum. And I consider that this is a lucky policy in the city because there is dramatically no way nowadays to protect this kind of buildings. So due to the UNESCO listing in 2005, monuments and historical areas have been fallen under careful protection from local authorities, and we see in the previous presentation. Unfortunately, the list is only for a certain kind of buildings and areas, and it has increased the demolishing and rebuilding process related to more modern and recent construction, heritage typology that has yet to be listed. Docomomo Macau has begun listing in the past 2 years. It has not been successful. Here I just put a series of buildings that may be in danger of being dramatically changed in the next years. The Red Market, the courthouse, the Grand Hotel, the building in the Rua da Cacena, the school in the Molasco, the Portuguese school, the Helen Orphanage, and the Hotel Central in the Avenida Macau's architects have taken care of the city heritage throughout several strategies, and some of these strategies are actually quite creative. And I think that this kind of renovation we can see all over the city. So one of the characteristics of the way that Macau deals with its heritage is that due to the chronic lack of space, we tend to reuse it. And the heritage buildings, fortunately, are subject to the program. I say fortunately because I come from Italy, and in Italy we are already very proud of heritage buildings that are transformed into museums. So I think it's helped to renovate the building and build a new program. So one of the strategies that has been commonly in place is to empty the building and its skin. And this strategy has been quite successful. I'm just putting here some examples of our colleagues' work, just to set up a standard and also to challenge the government representative that is here today on how the government policy can maybe be embedded in the future. So this is a refurbishment for the historical archive by our colleague Manuel Vicente. The idea is to empty the building inside and modernize completely the space according to the function that has been proposed. So the design uses a striking difference between materials. Here in the exterior we have mostly masonry and clay. The interior is all in glass and steel. And it is treated somehow like a jewel box, a very ordinary kind of space. This was as it was, now it's changed already. It was the main entrance of the archive with a very structure in concrete, which is the structure that held the old building facade. The advantage of this strategy is that the exterior of the building is unchanged, so therefore its participation in the city brain can continue, but inside the building has a new life and can be used according to current necessities. We have another strategy which has been to add up to the building. This is the example by Ireno and Antonio Soares, the ENU. It is a combination of the will of the client, the bank, to keep its original building, understanding that it has a city as an historical institution, and somehow the creativity of the architect and a certain intuition in floating the new building over the existing one, letting it breathe eventually. But if we have successful examples, we also have examples that are not so successful, and here comes the question, how can we deal with this kind of pressure on existing buildings? I think that the current strategies rely too much on the sensibility of the architect. It is proven by this example that by simply stating in the guidelines that we can build at the side or over an existing building is not enough. Maybe it would be recommendable to invest some time in studying the holding proportion of the buildings that are put side to side and produce an impact assessment maybe by 3D modeling or some other means. This is of course the Pier 16, historical entrance Macau, the old very pier, and the Pier 16, the casino at the back. Again, there has been the technique of reproducing buildings in style. I'm marking green the only original building in this piece of the Senado Square. You can see that all the other buildings has been redone, just to get 2 or 3 more floors, and some of them have even been redone without taking care of the minimum of the vocabulary used in the square, which is the arcades and the columns and the detail that the square is all about. And then we have an example of a building that are addition to existing buildings. This is an example by Carlotta Bruni. This is a Portuguese school. And we can see that although the new addition is differentiated, it at least complies with the general layout of the school and follows a certain reinterpretation of the school design. But then if we go for addition, we have another striking example in this addition of the Pedro Nolasco School, one of the best school buildings that we still have in Macau, where just by stacking a little bit the curve of the building is just not enough, and the height and the proportion of the new addition is not studied, and maybe some guidelines about this scale would have been helpful at the time. Even the use of the same color and the similar material doesn't help. And by this example, you can see that it is really very difficult as a private practitioner to take care of heritage building without the will and the policy to support us. I have another successful example here, also by Carlos Barreiros, is the health center in the Tapsiac, and you can see that there is a certain delicateness in taking care of the scale of the building on the side, which also has been done by our colleague Machado, and by colors and height and rhythm, this building become becomes a hybrid of the two buildings on the side. But if we let particular buildings on the side of historical heritage, and then we are opening up cases like this, which is the GCS building on the side of the San Domingos Church. And there is no policy yet that prevents this kind of cases, to my knowledge. So I just want now to share with you two projects that we have laid down in our practice regarding heritage conservation, and just to share what were the challenges that we faced during this design. The first one are the Moorish barracks. We began this project in 2001, and in Macau we were already talking about listing the city as a World Heritage. So we had to be very careful. But in the program of the building, what we inherited was a building with the two patios completely filled by construction, and the client who decided that not only they wanted all the area that was already in the building, including the patio, but if possible they wanted a little bit more. So our strategy has been to empty the patio and fit two L-shaped buildings inside the main hall, and to accommodate all the area that was requested in this way. So you can see here is a simple scheme on how we fitted the patio area on these L-shaped areas. These L-shaped areas are in 2 floors. So in the end we managed to empty the patio completely, renovated as a public space of the building. And again, this is the interior. We use the same technique that we've seen before to design a very different structure. It is a steel and glass structure that in fact doesn't actually touches the original building structure, it's just somehow an insertion. So we managed to create several spaces. We have, you can see, the public space, which is the space that the visitors that are interested in the UNESCO monuments are able to visit. And then you see in light brown the circulation of the building, and in green are the open spaces. So in the end we managed to empty the two original patios, and by design to create this vertical axis that connects the main hall to the back of the building, which was not existing. This connection didn't exist, and just we connected the building to the parking area and to create a more easy entrance for the staff. So this is the building as it was when we finished the construction. The second example is a small library that we did for the Macau Portuguese School. It is situated in the second patio of the school. And the strategy for this library was that it wouldn't be seen from the street. So the right-hand side picture is a picture from the street. The only thing that is visible is just the black ivy, which is the roof of the library. So again, we are talking about insertion and how to insert a new program into an historical existing building. And again, all done by the goodwill of the architect, without policies, without the memorandum or any kind of investigation about the building, the history, and what was important and what not should be kept in place. So our strategy was to design a space that wouldn't touch the actual building wall. So we created two small patios at each side of the roof slab and the patio in the middle. So as you can see in the section above, we just went down 4 steps in order to achieve the exact level of the wall, of the exterior wall, and have enough headroom inside to have a proportionate space. And by doing that, our black beam sets itself exactly at the height of the window of the surrounding building. We then designed a skylight at the entrance of the living room in order to make this separation effective. And in the end, what we managed to do is not to erase the patio that was there, to keep all the vegetation still in place, and to have a usable area within nature. So these are my contribution to today's conference. I wish we could have a discussion about strategies and policies for everything else that doesn't fall under IC own heritage conservation. Thank you.
I would like to call our speakers for a small Q&A session. And if we could focus our Q&A on the theme of heritage protection strategies, I think that would be very helpful. Do we have yes.
Is it better to have the lights on?
Thank you. So if you could just present yourself in English.
I'm Anna. I'm from Hong Kong. I'm also the program coordinator of a postgraduate diploma in cultural heritage management in Hong Kong. So we have been. I have taken my students to visit a number of cities in Asia, and in particularly in Japan, that they implement the landscape protection or act in Kyoto City or some of the historical cities, that they give guidelines of the buildings, that the ratio and the color code, and also some example that how to control the infill development in the historic environment, so that they can have a better ambience feeling of that particular area. So in Macau there's no such a law in Hong Kong, but in Macau are you going to like develop or studying this kind of law to be added in your current law? Scope of law. Because it's definitely what the practicing architect is looking forward to.
So if I got what what you would like to raise is there protection area for the buildings that are listed or of heritage value, and how is that protection area regulated? The landscape.
And whether it sees any challenges to introduce this new additional control.
Yes. To your question is in Japan and also in other countries, even in UNESCO they have a certain strategy called UVA, Universal Urban Landscape Policy. In Macau, as the protection law has just came out in 2014, there's in one article they have mentioned that we are going to have to produce a management framework for the historical center. So this framework we have a very detailed guidelines for the historical center. But the framework has to go through a certain process, legal process in between. We have just completed a public consultation for that framework last year, and then the result has been came out. And then for the next year, we are actually working on the second stage to work into more details of that framework, and then to release to the public to request more consultation as well. That means in the past, even before this law, we have certain guidelines for historical center, not just the historical center, but also the listed area. Because the historical center is just 10% of the Macau Panasonic. But then people always forget about buildings in the other areas like Taipa as well. And then there are some certain listed architecture in Taipa too. In terms of the guidelines, we have, but I have to say internally, internal guidelines for the property in the department. Yes, we have. These guidelines are inherited from the Portuguese before the handover. Actually, before the handover, these guidelines are written in Portuguese and has been used internally. The reason that it is used internally because the previous law didn't allow us to give compulsory opinions. But today we can. Every guidelines we release today will be compulsory, and that's why we have to go through a certain public consultation procedure before this complete guideline came out. However, there are some details of like an advertisement, like the billboards. There are guidelines in Kyoto as well. In Macau, we have this kind of installation guidelines for advertising billboards as well. It is public actually. It is released online. You can download online from the IACM website. But apart from that, I cannot release any more details because the public consultation is still in progress. So. We are still collecting opinions from the public about this framework. So next year we have a certain progress of that framework. Hopefully, we are doing our best to organizing the materials we have at the moment. Yes, in the future we have this guideline.
Since we're talking about that framework, I would like to ask you something that is somehow related to this, which is and it somehow it comes across when you talk about the work that
all this work that restoring the buildings that reusing the buildings that the IC has been doing, which is in a way you are testing a lot of how the effect of the practice and the construction and the design on the actual buildings. But when we go and see how it is coming for buildings that are not being developed or designed by the IC, the principles that are very generic, because they are either just about the facade or about very two or three different elements. So when we have a particular building, which is the case of modern heritage, you have a spatial structure, arrangement, and the way the light is brought in, the way the materials are used, and all of that somehow is not being addressed. So it's kind of keeping the door open. And so that's also my extension of Anna's question. How is it possible to cover that big kind of open door that is at this moment a critical thing for the policy, lack of policy in Macau?
To keep the door open is kind of important to a certain way, because when we draw the principles out, this is from the government point of view. There are certain principles we have to release, but also we have to leave some space for the creativity to regenerate. Because if you draw too detailed guidelines, that would become too much constraints, and that would become lack of balance for the architect, for the owners to express their creativity. So sometimes, from the government point of view, we don't want to draw too much restrictions into the examples you were talking about, the lighting, how to bring the lighting into the building. It's difficult to write on this. That's why it is a framework. That's why I say it is a framework. It is not a design guidebook. It is not a textbook. People have to study and express them. Have the right to study and express themselves. And that's why you have to keep the door open for some others' creativity to be exploited, to be explored. And the government, importantly, the government position is to draw the framework so that people understand the basic principle. But because of that principle, there are other doors to go, and then that will become. That's why I said government alone is not enough. We need architects, we need the society, the public, to understand how we bring the light into this heritage. This is we have to share the responsibilities, sometimes. So to have a good balance is very important.
Do we have a
This is Cecilia Chuan, chair of the Docomomo Hong Kong chapter. I want to personal thanks all the speakers for these wonderful presentations. It's really interesting. It is actually, I'm always very impressed coming to Macau and look at the enthusiasms, the cooperation from the government officials and also the architects and architectural enthusiasts in talking about how to protect heritage. I wish we had that kind of level in Hong Kong. We have a lot of protests, but some successful cases, but we don't really have that level of cooperations, which I find it really interesting related to Macau's history. I have a question more on Florani's presentations. It's very fascinating cases on architecture. It raises questions. You told us about this case of this Chinese roof building that you decided not to use it as a case for the application of Docomomo chapter Taiwan. So I find it quite interesting. It's actually raised the questions of what is modern heritage, and so maybe that is actually in itself, it's an important case in point for discussions about this non-Western modern architecture in this part of the world, because we don't see the similar kind of debates about the sort of cultural elements injected into modern architecture, which I think just makes it more interesting to make an effort to make a case for arguing what, if it is heritage, if it's not heritage, what makes it that way. That's one question. It's a little bit more theoretical. And the other is I haven't heard from you as much on the challenges in protecting heritage. As the case in Macau, we know a little bit more about the politics behind the protection of these modern buildings, including maybe public awareness and also community participation, which I think Macau has done quite a lot since 2005 with the UNESCO designation. So what is the case in Taiwan might be interesting. The audience might want to know a little bit more.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, Cecilia. For the first question, I take those buildings off the list temporarily because first of all, we have to pending the dossier of devoir. They ask us to do the homework. So we have to like 30. You have already done 30 different buildings. So I told those buildings out of the list. Just don't want to have any trouble for the first stage. To get our voting rights to be approved. But in the future, I'm thinking of maybe have some discussion with Docomomo Macau and Docomomo Hong Kong. I think this kind of architecture must be numbers in 1950s, 60s, and 70s in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. As you see in my presentation, those buildings are not non-interesting. They are very interesting, but especially Wang Daohong or Zhang Zhaokang or even Chen Qikwan, they try to make new architecture or new Chinese architecture with either sometimes with traditional composition, plain composition. Sometimes with some other ideas. I think different architects has a personal interpretation for each building, especially for their interpretation for so-called modernization of Chinese building, Chinese architecture. And that's why we see many different ways to do new buildings like the way of Wang Daohong. We see Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall. It's totally different kind, but his Ministry of Foreign Affairs they don't show the roof, but they have some kind of roof on the top of the building, or some others like apartment buildings. He got some interesting interpretation. Sometimes they do on the plan. Sometimes we do something on the architectural details, but not necessarily to show up the roof on the top of the building. So I think that we might consider them or those buildings or those architects, they might try to interpret themselves in different way, personal way, or try to find out a way make the Chinese identity in the building and closing to a new era. So they are struggling. I think we can consider them to be a process of struggling. Not the way I was shows like in the Zhongshan building is totally copied. Not really copied, but the details they are copied. The roof, the details, the dogong details, etc. But the others also they try to make different, like Zhang Zhaokang in the agricultural exhibition hall. We don't see much the Chinese architectural elements, but we see how he tried to interpret the space, like the soap. French. You can speak French. The base with to have some colder space with the building, and he tried to in a smart way. He did it, and from outside you don't see any Chinese architectural element. Literally interpreted, but in space you feel that they have something from the gene of the building. He made it. I think it worth to reveal to have some more even big discussion on it. I think more in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan there are a lot of this kind of building. And for the second question is the act for protection of cultural heritage in Taiwan. I think the first act was created in 1982 or 83, but it was pretty primitive. There's only historical monuments. Objects or archaeological sites, 3 or 4 different classifications, categories. But we modified the act in 2005. In the end of 2005, it's becoming 7 different categories, including historical buildings, historical monuments, archaeological sites, cultural landscape, settlement, and some natural heritage and objects. We modified the act again this year, and just signed by the president of Taiwan in the end of July. So it's not only a slight change, but we try to make it more categories in order to include all kinds of cultural heritage, and also for the before. If one wants to classify a building as a historical monument, there's 2 ways to do. Either you are the owner of the building, if you try to report your building as to be classified as a historical monument, it could be done. Otherwise, the process will be initiated by either local government or the central government. The Ministry of Culture or the Bureau of Cultural Affairs. And all the others who want to protect some buildings, if they reported the building, they could only on the list of surveillance. It could not be classified or inscribed. But the new law, the new modified act, that anyone who wants to protect some building, it could be when they reported the building, they wanted to classify or to inscribe some building. It will be in the process immediately. So it's totally different. So anyone who wants to protect some building, who think that some building is valuable to be protected, to have some cultural heritage value, anyone could do that. And it will be right in the process, not only list on the list of the surveillance. It's a big change because it is demanded by citizens. They wanted to take part of their participation in the process. Anyone who got the citizenship, of course, if you are foreigners, I will not take consideration. It's a law now. It's more, and also in the process, the public, it's open to public now. Before, for the advisory committee, when they have the meeting, it's all public are blocked out. No one have the right to participate the advisory committee for discussion, etc. Now it's open to public. So when we have it's almost like a public hearing now the process in Taiwan.
Thank you. Do we have one more last question? If not, then I would close the section and thank everybody for coming. Thank you, the speakers, for a wonderful presentation.
Actually, I have some questions. Facade is a protection. I forgot.